la durée du crédit. Donc ces revenus-là, ils doivent être aussi domiciliés dans nos livres réguliers, peuvent être mensuels, trimestriels. Dans les cas des salariés du public, on tient aussi compte des primes qu'ils perçoivent. En général, c'est des primes trimestrielles. Je vous remercie.
Mufundu, I'd like to direct the question to you. So at FNB, you are providing a pension-backed lending to your clients. The principle behind that is, you save tomorrow, you save for tomorrow to get credit today. Can you talk a little bit about that product and what it is and how does it work?
Sure. So FNB is renowned for this one slogan called "How can we help you?" Right? So and this becomes the central piece of how we solve for people's problems, right? So our customers come to us with a variety of issues, and in the housing space, we've done very well with the traditional home loan. Traditional home loan is pretty onerous, and I think the delegation here can actually attest to that. There's title that needs to be sorted out. There's also lawyers that need to be paid. There's a registration process that also takes place, and it can be rather long. So the opportunity then comes in for us to extend credit to people who have a pension. In that, excuse me, they don't have to go through all of these steps. But today you have a pension, and we can borrow against it and use it as a security. So in some jurisdictions such as Namibia, you're able to withdraw from the pension. In South Africa, we don't do that. We borrow you on the strength of the pension. So typically what would happen is that the law allows us to lend up to 90%, but in agreement with certain funds, generally it's between 60 and 70% of whatever you have available in your fund. Now this solves a couple of problems for particularly the low end of the market. You can use this facility. It has to be used for housing. So we need to just clarify that. It has to be used for housing. But you can use it to renovate a house, buy a house, build, or buy land with the intention it has to be your primary residence. It opens up an opportunity to first-time home buyers to enter the market.
In most instances, the bank will only give an 80% loan, and they want a 20% deposit. And many people in that category, in fact many people all around, don't just have a 20% deposit and put down. In that way, the banks would then decline the loan and the person wouldn't have access to their housing finance. So the HLGC, and similarly now the HFGA RE in the African context, then provides that 20% cover for that kind of deposit amount. To the bank buy that cover, so it's an insurance product. The bank buy that product from HLGC in the South African context, or through HFGA RE and a local insurer in each country to cover that 20, if it's 20%. In that way, the low-income earner, the bank's done their assessment, and they then buy that 20% cover. They have 100% cover. They can then pass on the loan, 100% loan to the borrower. So it's a very sad state of affairs when a bank declines loans to people that have affordability but don't have a deposit. And we say to banks, you can address this by having this insurance product in your market, in your market. Is that why decline a borrower the loan when they can actually afford it, but they just don't have that deposit? So that's on the HFGA RE. Very simple. I'm sure we'll dig deeper into risk management, etc. On my other capital, we're also part of our group of companies. It's quite a new one to us. It's the payment gateway, which we have acquired within our group of companies. And simply with the payment gateway in the housing context, it's a very universal product. In the housing context, it is there as to be the safe conduit for the flow of funds. So what I'm trying to explain is, You may have, in an incremental housing type example, you have a lender that has assessed and provides a loan to a borrower to do building, similar to what Mark was talking about. But one of the great problems in that market is the money can be misspent. You, the recipient, you the borrower, you've got this loan amount. There's no guarantee that you could go and buy other things and you could misspend that loan amount. Once the gateway clips in, the gateway then integrates into the lender, where the money, the source of the funds stays in the lender's account, in an escrow account. The borrowers have wallets with their loan amounts allocated to, call it a wallet within that escrow account, and it stays there. The money the lump sum never gets given to the borrower. The gateway then also integrates into selected merchants that the lender would prefer their borrowers buying their supplies from. So that way, our borrower now has access to funds, that their loans approved. They either use it. In South Africa, we're still quite a card-heavy kind of country. You could have a card swipe. But we know that in the work we're doing in Africa, it goes to an app, mobile money, and the mobile phone operator. That doesn't matter. The person then goes to the merchant and goes and buys their cement and their bricks and their timber, whatever it might be, does the transaction. The message from the merchant comes via the gateway up to the lender. We say, yes, there's sufficient money in that person's account. So it's just a message. It goes back down to the transactions approved, and the borrower then takes their building goods and off they go. And overnight, the merchant is then settled. So the payment is made with you. So that, using the payment gateway in this social development in the financial inclusion market, it really becomes the safe conduit of the flow of funds for pay-for purpose and limit the money being misspent on something else. So that's kind of just very briefly how the payment gateway can work within the housing context.
Thanks, Victor. I think we've got the PowerPoint on, and this will give us a chance maybe to showcase some of your products, those presentations. So let's start with you, Mark. I think you have the pointer there.
Right, I'm just going to move through this quite quickly. I think on this slide, the background, I've given the background information of where we come from. Apology. I've given the background, so I'm not going to cover that again. So what we do, as I mentioned, that it's a Zulu word that means helping you in progress. So in the late 90s, we were one of the first role players in South Africa who then granted access to people who previously were not served by the formal banking sector. And in that way, we help people to gain access to credit, and then more recently, we're helping them gain access in rural areas, especially low-income people, for housing finance. Whether you come from a high-income background or from a low-income background, all people have a dream, and usually, as part of that dream, your residence or the place where you stay form part of that dream that you want to come to realization. So in Tutukani, we say that we are trying to help people to realize their dreams, and we're not really selling products. Unfortunately, in South Africa and many of the other countries, this is the reality of many of the people of lower income communities in terms of their living conditions. And when a person has a dream and they want to improve those living conditions, that is where our product offering comes in. Through our relationship, the solution that we've got, the funding we offer, the relationship we have to build with the building merchants, that helps that low-income consumer to start a journey. And then that journey is usually a journey that starts brick by brick because it's an incremental process, not like a mortgage where people borrow a large sum of money and can do an entire project. Here the people improve their living conditions incrementally, and then in the end of their dream or in the end of their process, they then end up with a proper dwelling or a dream come true. In the South African context, this is the people over the age of 18 in terms of the income distribution. Typically, the banks would play in the top 2 or 3 categories of the income bands. In Tutukani, we focus on people who earn between 15,000 Rand per month down to 1,500 Rand per month, and that would be then classified as lower income communities. Our client composition is made up, as I mentioned, of people earning between the the majority of people earning between 3.5 and 15,000 rand. We have quite a large women lender community. 43% of our loans go to women who borrow. This is typically what our kiosks look like when you walk into the building merchant. This is a typical kiosk that we have in those merchants where people will then come and apply for credit. Our distribution channel, we've got two approaches. One, of course, being the distribution channels in the kiosk in the merchants. But then we also have employers who approach us where they've got employees who have a legitimate need to access housing finance. And they're struggling, as I say, often to find this from the formal banking sector or formal institutions. And then we offer credit as part of an employee scheme in those companies where people can then access credit. One of the challenges that companies sit with is many people have approached them to offer housing finance to employees, but then all of that credit ends up as consumption lending and no housing has taken place. So with Tutukani, because we only focus on housing finance, if they want a personal loan, they can go elsewhere, but if they want a housing finance, then they can come to us. So we focus on a niche market. We're also a responsible lender because with every client that we go through a whole process of compiling a budget, in that way ensuring that he can afford the loan that he or she is taking out. We comply with the Credit Act in South Africa, which I think is quite a cumbersome piece of legislation to deal with, but we are registered and compliant with them, and we also follow an approach of treating customers fairly. And then, I think part of our initiatives going forward would be to expand this business model, and I think one of the questions will deal with that just now, so I'm not going to present on it, I'll answer the question session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. To the audience, no, you're fine? Okay, very good. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Bon, là, je vais switcher un peu en français. Alors, une question, Edwige, par rapport le risque. À votre avis, je voulais savoir quel est le plus grand risque que vous faites face tous les jours à votre travail en accordant les prêts hypothécaires à vos clients?
En général, c'est le risque de non-remboursement, ce qui nous amène à toujours vérifier la qualité de l'employeur du client qu'on finance. Il y a également un autre risque, puisque en Côte d'Ivoire, la garantie principale qui est utilisée pour couvrir les prêts immobiliers, c'est l'hypothèque. Et le constat est qu'il y a beaucoup de problèmes de foncier. Les titres fonciers ne sont pas créés, les lotissements ne sont pas véritablement approuvés. Et donc les financements qu'on fait sont beaucoup plus focalisés sur les grandes villes, donc Abidjan et périphérie. Les villes de l'intérieur, c'est un peu difficile par rapport à la valeur des terrains et à l'existence de cadastres de conservation foncière pour sécuriser notre investissement, vu on doit forcément prendre une hypothèque, parce que c'est la garantie principale en fait. Et du coup, il y a des clients qui sont éligibles au financement parce qu'ils ont des revenus intéressants, parce qu'ils ont l'âge qu'il faut, mais la banque ne peut pas forcément les accompagner parce qu'elle n'a pas de garantie en face. Enfin, la garantie préférée, c'est l'hypothèque. Bon, on ne va pas demander à un client de nous faire un compte à terme sur une durée de 20-25 ans, puisque aujourd'hui, on peut financer jusqu'à 25 ans. Et du coup, notre champ d'action est assez réduit. Donc, quand bien même le problème au niveau de l'employeur, le problème du remboursement serait résolu, on est confronté à l'autre problème qui concerne la prise de garantie.
Et donc vous financez jusqu'à 25 ans.
C'est un promoteur, parce qu'on a signé des conventions avec certains promoteurs. Et pour les clients qui veulent acheter chez eux dans les opérations, on peut aller jusqu'à 25 ans. Mais en général, c'est 20 ans.
Merci beaucoup.
Je vous en prie.
Oui, on va arriver aux questions-réponses juste après cette panel. Mafundo, okay, so let's talk about risk. In your pension-backed lending, can you talk to me about some of the risks that you face in your day-to-day activities?
One of the biggest limitations, I guess, I think one of the biggest limitations is that the fund obviously dictates how much we can actually extend to the customer. So the younger population would generally have not worked long enough for them to have accumulated a big pension, which then limits, obviously, because we can only borrow insofar as you have funds available in your fund. But also the movement of customers then puts them at risk of us having to access the fund. So the premise of the pension backed is that you use your pension as security, and if you move, you then have to settle the loan. If you don't have enough, we then access the funds. And in the South African context, if you withdraw or if we then call our loan against your pension, there are tax implications to the customer. So those are some of the risks that we have, or limitations that the pension-backed loan have. But I think they're far outweighed, the pros far outweigh the cons. But we'll talk about that a little bit. Okay.
Thank you. And so, Mark, what about in your business? I mean, you are really going down market in rural South Africa. So I imagine you're facing risks every day, particularly credit risk. Please, can you talk about it and share it with all of us?
So I'd say we have to cover three major risks. We've obviously got credit risk. We have fraud risk as well, because in the type of business that we're involved in, we get confronted with quite a bit of fraud. And then the third one relates to the funds not being used for housing. So all of these are risks we have to manage. The risk relating to the credit risk, because we're dealing with lower income consumers, if a country's economy is contracting or under pressure, it's usually your lower income, less skilled people who tend to lose their jobs first. And that's where the contraction typically happens in the market. And that's where we sort of have to come in and manage that risk quite properly. Of course, we manage this risk through our comprehensive affordability assessment, the budget process we put our clients through. We try and mitigate the risk in that fashion. The second one relates to fraud, and that's where we receive applications from bogus clients or syndicates who set themselves up with all the necessary documentation, so we have to protect ourselves against that. We've also had one or two incidents where the merchants that we are dealing with, they end up having cash flow problems. We pay money, to them for delivering building material, but because they have got cash flow problems, they can't acquire or source the building material to deliver. So we have to manage that risk, as well. And then our funder currently is the Rural Home Loan Fund. They've just recently merged with the National Housing Finance Corporation, whose chief executive is also at this conference, Mr. Samson Maraba. So they are our funders, and our mandate is very clear that we have to spend this money in housing. So we have to make sure that people don't intend using it for housing and then find another purpose for it. So that's the other risk that we have to manage quite properly.
Thank you. Victor, moving on to you. So you mentioned risk management let's talk about the reinsurance business. You provide the first loss, or they call it a sort of a mortgage, a deposit cover, or a sort of a collateral mortgage indemnity, collateral cover indemnity. So I'm wondering, what do you do to mitigate this risk?
The default for, obviously, there's a common default. I think anyone, wherever in the world, there's some common things for defaulting. People either lose their job, so they don't have the income, or they're over-indebted, and it's all economic problems why they may default. In our instance, I'm just going to give you a quick reason in South Africa, where, first of all, when the bank notify the company that this person is in default, they tell us within the first month that someone has miss the payment. We then, number one, our major risk management tool is to go and interact with the person immediately. Go and speak to them, find out why are you defaulting. We don't want you to lose your home. So we try to do that risk management face to face. Risk management's not just done in an ivory tower sitting doing papers. You go out into the field, you meet the family. We're not the bank, so we're not threatening them. That borrower owes us nothing. But we go there and do that field work, and we meet the family and sit down with them and find out why they are defaulting. Once we understand the reason of the default, we could, and we do negotiate with the bank to give the person possible an extension due to economic or financial reasons that they're having at the moment. And that's very successful. In the South African context, what we then found, one of our major reasons for default was the person is ill. So our field counsellor would sit with the family and find out the reason of default, and the family would say, well, I'm not well, and I'm not doing too well, my health is deteriorating, some days I'm at work, some days I'm not, then they possibly get boarded, and that affects the income. In the South African context, the HIV prevalence rate is extremely high, and that's no secret. That's just the way, the sad state of affairs. So what we found is many borrowers were ill and not being at work earning an income due to, well, that there's a possibility that it would be an HIV/AIDS related illness. So the way that we managed that risk is we went head on into that market. And what we then did is we set up a network of trained HIV nurses around the country. And the minute each month the bank give us a schedule of borrowers where our guarantee has been used to cover that deposit amount, we then contact those borrowers by appointment. And it has to be completely, it's optional, and the person must be willing. It can never be conditional. And we then sent a nurse to that family in the privacy of their home, and they talk HIV, and they encourage them to know their status, etc. If the family are keen to go forward, the nurse can test immediately, gives them the result immediately. It's a rapid test. Within 3 to 5 minutes, they've got the result with very good pre-test counseling. If the person happens to test positive, or it could be a spouse, and the borrower and spouse both test, we don't just leave it there. We then take it a step further. We have an in-house case manager that then puts that borrower and that family, and it gives them access to the very best treatment and care that there is. Because it's in our interest to manage our risk. We want that borrower to be at work, fit, healthy, and well, earning the income so that they pay their mortgage. We don't want them to get behind on their mortgage. So that's a very practical way of dealing with risk management. A is to react immediately up front when you know of a default. You don't leave it for 3 or 4 or 5 months where it's too far down the line. And you do something about you try and tackle the actual issue head on. And one last thing, if I may, the other very big flag that we as a group of companies, HLGC in South Africa and HFGA Re in the 11 African countries where we work, is the greatest risk management tool is to empower and educate your borrower up front. That is what we have found. When the borrower knows what they're getting themselves into, what it entails, what to do, what not to do, who to do it, that lowers the risk, hugely. I mean, our rate was down to less than 2% of a default rate, and we put that to the education that we provided and pioneered many years back. Educate up front, and I think that's one of the great risk management tools that any lender, should be looking at.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Victor. I think absolutely consumer education is key to managing risk, and this is something that should be transmitted throughout the value chain. We only have sort of 5 minutes left, so let's maybe check the temperature and see if there's any questions, any burning questions. I know that there was a question back then. Yes.
Donc, bonjour. Moi, ma question, c'est pour la BACI. En fait, je voulais savoir quel était le délai moyen pour l'obtention du certificat d'inscription hypothécaire sur la place d'Abidjan. La deuxième question, c'est de savoir est-ce que les frais connexes liés au crédit immobilier sont financés par la BACI en plus du montant du prêt. Merci.
Est-ce que vous pouvez répéter la deuxième question, s'il vous plaît?
Donc la deuxième question, c'est de savoir est-ce que les frais connexes, notamment la prime d'assurance décès, les frais notariaux, sont financés par la banque en même temps que le montant du crédit, ou bien c'est déduit de le montant du prêt.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am, please. No.
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes.
great. No, yeah, my question is also for the SGBCE presenter. What I'd like to know, et peut-être je peux poser une question en français en fait, ça va être plus facile. Ok. Donc Madame, merci beaucoup pour votre présentation. J'aimerais avoir une idée en fait un petit peu de données en fait sur votre portefeuille si c'est possible. Donc est-ce que vous pourriez nous dire déjà par an à peu près combien de prêts immobiliers vous donnez? Est-ce que vous avez une idée de comment ces prêts immobiliers se partagent, comment on dit, breakdown, se répartissent entre différents niveaux de revenus. Donc, est-ce que c'est plutôt les niveaux de revenus plutôt bas, plutôt moyens, plutôt, on va dire, élevés? Si vous pourriez nous donner une idée un petit peu de votre portefeuille et de la taille de ce portefeuille à l'heure actuelle. Portefeuille de crédit acquéreur. Merci.
We'll take one more question. Yes, please, ma'am.
My question goes to Fundo. In the pension-backed loan, do you still request for collateral in terms of title?
Okay, we'll go to a second set of questions right after this. So most of the questions, Edwidge, c'était adressé à vous par rapport d'abord le portefeuille de Madame et aussi la question par rapport à l'assistance de crédit. Ouais. Pas vraiment attrapé la première question. Mais...
Oui, la première question concernait les délais. C'est ça?
Oui, le délai moyen pour l'obtention du CIH.
Le délai moyen pour l'obtention du CIH, ça concerne, c'est le notaire en fait qui fait l'inscription et les diligences qu'il met en place pour faire cette inscription. On peut dire en moyenne 1 mois, mais quelquefois plus. En général, quand le notaire il se met à fond pour faire l'inscription, en 1 mois, on peut obtenir le CIH. Mais je confirme que le délai peut être plus long, jusqu'à 3 mois.
Excusez-moi, tout le monde connaît c'est quoi le CIH?
Le CIH, c'est le certificat d'inscription hypothécaire. C'est la preuve de la garantie de la banque sur le bien qu'elle a financé ou sur le bien qu'elle prend en garantie en termes d'hypothèque. Et une banque qui fait un crédit et qui n'a pas de CIH à la fin, elle a un risque. Elle encourt un risque. Parce qu'elle fait des crédits sans garantie en face.
Très bien. Et par rapport à la deuxième question...
Il avait parlé des frais connexes. Je sais pas, j'ai entendu BHCI, moi c'est SGBCI.
Non. Oh. Ah, ok. Excusez-moi. En fait, bon, je disais les frais connexes, puisque le crédit immobilier...
Oui, je sais, il y a les frais de notaire, il y a les frais...
un peu lourd ce crédit-là.
Oui.
Je voulais savoir si la banque finançait ces frais-là en même temps que le montant du crédit, ou bien comment ça se faisait.
Bon, au niveau de SGBCI, on aurait souhaité... on est en train de voir dans quelle mesure on pourrait le faire, parce que ça nous amènerait... Je pourrais vous dire non pour le moment. Ces frais-là ne sont pas pris en compte dans le crédit qu'on accorde. Bon, pour certains cas, on analyse et puis on y va. Mais sinon, de façon générale, ces frais ne sont pas intégrés au prêt. L'une des raisons, c'est que ça nous amènerait à financer un bien au-delà de sa valeur par rapport au montant du... Je donne un exemple tout simple. Le client, il a besoin de 100 millions CFA. Bon, je ne vais pas dire en euros. Ouais. Il a besoin de 100 millions de francs CFA pour construire son logement. Il y a des frais d'architecte qu'on peut évaluer à 5 millions. Il y a des frais de notaire, on peut dire 5 millions. Il y a également des frais d'expertise. Bon, tous les frais afférents peuvent être chiffrés à 20 millions. Alors, on considère comme... Le montant financier est considéré en général comme étant la valeur du bien. D'accord? Et c'est sur ce montant-là que nous, on prend notre garantie. Bon, on ne pourrait pas faire un prêt de 100 millions et avoir une garantie de 120 millions. Je ne sais pas si vous voyez un peu ce que je veux dire. Donc, pour ce problème-là, pour cette raison, on n'arrive pas à... Pour le moment, on cherche des solutions parce qu'effectivement, c'est des frais qui ne sont pas négligeables. On est en train de chercher les solutions pour pouvoir le financer, mais pour le moment, non. Quand c'est possible, on propose aux clients de faire plutôt un prêt, un crédit conso, dans la mesure du possible, si sa quotité le lui permet.
Très bien.
Merci.
Et par rapport à la question sur le portefeuille et un peu sur la segmentation des revenus.
Bon, pour les crédits accordés, ils sont répartis sur tous les revenus, mais je dois avouer qu'en termes de montant, c'est beaucoup plus les clients, nous on les appelle les patrimoniaux et les bonnes gammes, des clients qui ont des revenus supérieurs à 600, 700 000 francs CFA. Par mois. Par mois. Un individu. Un individu. Bon, il arrive qu'on finance le foyer, monsieur, madame peut faire un prêt conjoint, mais ce qui arrive le plus souvent, c'est l'une des personnes qui sollicite le prêt. Bon, je ne sais pas si vous êtes autorisé à donner des chiffres. Je ne pourrais malheureusement pas, mais je dois vous dire qu'on avait lancé une campagne l'année dernière au taux de 6%. Et qui a vraiment, on a eu, je peux dire que la campagne a donné parce qu'il y a eu beaucoup de personnes intéressées qui sont venues, parce que le but en fait c'était aussi de financer les foyers à faible revenu, parce que je dois avouer qu'ils ne sont pas bien servis, hein, parce qu'à cause des revenus qui sont assez faibles, l'accession au logement est un peu difficile. Comme disait monsieur tout à l'heure, par rapport aux frais annexes, c'est pas facile pour un revenu, quelqu'un qui a 250 000 francs, de pouvoir acheter une maison à 10 millions et ajouter à cela les frais de notaire, les frais de... Bon, il y a tous les frais qui s'ajoutent et c'est un peu lourd à supporter. Et du coup, quand le client il s'engage pour un prêt immobilier, c'est difficile d'avoir un autre prêt, puisque la quotité est carrément plombée par ce prêt-là. Bon, comme on dit, on cherche toujours les solutions. Et pour le moment, je pourrais vous dire, en termes de nombre, effectivement, les revenus, les faibles revenus, il y en a beaucoup, mais en montant, ces montants-là sont beaucoup plus... concernent beaucoup plus les revenus, les revenus les plus élevés. Hein? La clientèle patrimoniale et bonne gamme, comme on les appelle chez nous, à AGPC.
Merci beaucoup, Edwige. Mafundo, there was a question directed to you on your pension-backed lending, partner.
Yeah. So the collateral, let me just clarify that is the pension fund. So that is the security that we hold for the lending. The title becomes one of the documents that we require in the application, just to confirm that there is a property or there's land, much like we want to know who you are, so we'd have an identification document. We also would require maybe a proof or rather, how do you call it, offer to purchase. I don't know what the conventional offer to purchase. So it would be an offer to purchase that forms part of our documentation, application documentation. But what we hold as collateral or the security is the pension, not the title. Yeah.
Thank you, Mafundo. We have a few more minutes left. Maybe we'll take just a couple more questions. Yes, the gentleman right there.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to know from Mr. Mfundo on if there is any difference in terms of pricing between the traditional mortgage vis-a-vis the pension-backed one, given the risk profile could be different?
So the pension-backed is viewed as a lower risk, much lower risk. You've got the fund as a guarantee. It's there. It's the money. You can access it. There's no sort of probability of default is very low. So we then price a little favorably on the pension-backed as opposed to the traditional. So just to give you some ideas around the pricing, would be generally prime less 2, where the prime less 2 would be with really good employer groups, big employer groups where we've got economies of scale and we can actually price those customers very well. But we generally would price below prime.
2 pips.
2 pips, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm afraid we're running out of time. Please, though, feel free to direct your questions after the session outside. So thank you all. Again, I want to thank the panelists for this, for their contribution, and I hope you enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. The next presentation, I'm calling Mr. Ronald Omyonga from I Build Global. The theme will be Strengths in Numbers, I Build Global's first year, insight from Kenya and South Africa underwriting. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I think the title of this presentation is a bit interesting. The word underwriting at the end is a mistake. I am not an expert on underwriting, and part of the typo moved that word there. So just read the presentation as strength in numbers, the case of insights from Kenya and South Africa. That title is a very good title. When you think about strength in numbers, as Africans, we have lots of sayings about strength in numbers. My friend from Tanzania, they say Swahili was born in Zanzibar, raised in Tanzania, got ill in Kenya, and died in Uganda, and was buried somewhere in DRC. So the Swahili becomes worse as you go towards the West. And so I'm going to use a Swahili proverb here, but I hope that the Tanzanian in the house will not let me down. There's something they say, kidole kimoja akivunji chawa. That loosely translates like you cannot break or crush lice with only one finger. Actually, those of us who are born and raised in rural areas, and we are becoming fewer and fewer, you know that when you woke up, sometimes there were lice all over, and you needed to be able to kill them. And one of the things you did was you placed the louse between your 2 thumbs, and you crushed it using your 2 thumbs and the nails. And that really shows what numbers can do, strength in numbers. But the housing sector, and the presentation from IFC really showed that, has so many players. Those are the numbers we're talking about, just in terms of the magnitude of the various players on the housing value chain that need to be connected. And so I Build sets out to try and connect those different players so that they start talking to each other. Because if you bring people together who are not talking to each other, you don't create strength in numbers, you actually create chaos. That's why we were being told about mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. So we need to make sure that different players in the value chain are talking to each other in a way that enables them to work towards the same cause. And then the other aspect of numbers that iBuild deals with is in terms of data. As we interact with various different players within the housing value chain, we aggregate data that is important for the various players to be able to interact within the housing value chain, from the policy making to material supply to all these other things, to underwriting. That's the only time I'll talk about underwriting. That with numbers, somebody who's trying to assess a client can be able to assess that better. So there have been lots of presentations talking about the problem, the housing problem. And we have a number of slides that highlight that. I'm not going to spend too much time on talking about the problem because people have articulated it very well here. And sometimes we seem like we celebrate the housing problem rather than celebrating the solution. I want to move much faster through the housing problem and move towards what we are trying to do to turn that housing problem into a solution. So the housing crisis, you know that there is the mortgage-led finance and self-funded development. And Kisha did a very good study, which has been quoted before, that the average house that is developed formally is only affordable to 15% of the population. That means that even as we work very hard on the strategies that focus on the 15%, we need to think about the people who are constructing with the 85%, which is really not the traditional mortgage system. What is interesting is that when you think about economy, houses that are produced en masse should be cheaper than houses that are produced individually. But it's funny that a house that somebody produces 1,000 houses and each unit house is bigger, that is more costly than a house that is produced by an individual. But sometimes I think it's also an issue of data. That when you ask somebody who has finished a house alone, they will not tell you how much it has costed because they don't remember some of the things they have spent. When you ask them about the house, they will not even remember they bought a plot for that land. They will not remember that they connected power. They left work to go and do that. And so that's lost. And that's why, Kisha, maybe you might want to rethink, is that statement true? Because some people think that the house was cheaper, when in essence, maybe it wasn't. That's what data could do. Maybe we are just celebrating something that doesn't really exist. Yeah. So we believe that in citizen empowerment, taking advantage of technology, we can be able to make lending much easier within the housing space. We believe that, if you look at what technology has done with transport, like Uber and all those other things, we believe that technology can also come to bear in enabling citizens to participate in the housing space. Okay. So when you look at the system we have built, which is really a platform that touches across the entire housing value chain, globally, when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, our app actually, when it's fully functioning, touches on 11 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm not going to go into the details of how that does, but when you think about the fact that it deals with jobs, deals with safe housing, deals with all those things across the housing value chain, including sanitation, water, and all those, it really has impact to touch all aspects of life. So that's a figure I wanted to keep in mind, that 440 million households right now lack access to housing. I think most people want to mourn about that, but since I'm sitting mainly with business people, it should be an exciting thought. If you had something where you could spend, each of those 440 million will give you $1 each, you will become a dollar millionaire in one day. So if we can think of solving that problem, then we have access to solving the problem of 440 million people and 440 million households, and that provides opportunities for business in those, in those households. So what does this really mean to us? I would like to think about, the scarcity of affordable housing has created a global housing crisis, which we have talked about, and I've actually alluded to the fact that that cannot be solved by only conventional means. We need to think about how do we support the way people naturally build right now so that we can try to solve the housing crisis. Yeah. You can see the population growth globally. You can see that the population analysis shows that the highest number of growth is in Asia, of course followed by Africa. But what's interesting is that 62% of informal settlements, 62% of people living in urban areas in Africa live in informal settlements, compared to 30% in Asia who live in informal settlements. So although in terms of real numbers, there are many Asians living in informal settlements, the percentage of those living in informal settlements in the African situation is much, much higher. Yeah. 25% of the global population lives in slums, and 90% are employed informally. One of the things is that it's not possible for us to close that housing gap using normal conventional building methods. We move to the next slide. I have talked about that 86% of our population is actually employed informally, compared to 60% of the global population that is employed informally. So that's why we want to focus on citizen empowerment. And that's the reason I'm saying this is that we need to think about housing not just as a problem, but as a job creator. And that's why we want to move towards empowering people. So how is the current system operating? The current system is broken. Families have a serious problem trying to access housing. If you have tried to build a house in an urban setup, just the process of trying to get through that house, even for somebody who is educated or middle income, is very complex. You need to find an architect, then go find a quantity surveyor who will do for you quantities, then after that take it for approval, then after that look for someone who is going to fund you. When you go to a financial institution, they will ask you for evidence to show how much money you need. And that means that if you did not have money to first pay an architect and a quantity surveyor to generate for you the drawings, which then are the basis for you to get a loan, you basically can't go through the process of getting a loan. And so what happens even if you get the loan? How do you ensure that whatever you got the loan for is actually what you get in terms of construction? Some of us who have tried to build, you actually maybe need to take leave for you to be able to supervise construction. That's why you realize that most constructions are going to be happening in December, when people are breaking to go home, because that's when they can be able to supervise construction, because it's a full-time job. You don't know when the worker reported to work. You don't know whether the cement you ordered actually ended up on site or it went elsewhere. Architects right now are not participating in designing the space. And architects here also include other professionals. So that's why we have a housing space that is chaotic, because professionals are not participating because they are seen to be expensive. Suppliers do not even know where the next cement will be required. So you will have cases in which one part of the country cement is sitting in stores where it might even go bad because the construction is slow, while in other places there is a scarcity of cement. And so you, as a material supplier, you want to know where the supplies are going to be expected. When you think about the lenders, for a lender today, one of the reasons why financial institutions don't want to go into the housing space is that you just don't know how much money that person really requires. Are you going to give him too much or are you going to give him too little? And when you give him the money, how much of that money will actually end up being used for construction? And where they are building, are they building on a road reserve or they're building, So there's so many things that increase the risk for the lender. When you talk about a contractor, right now one of the problems the contractors have is that just having flow of work, they don't know where the next work is going to come from. So they basically have to keep searching. We want to think about how we can help with that. And what contractors have done is that if you go to them right now, so that they ensure they have flow of work, is that if you go to a contractor and you tell him you have a 3-bedroom, you want to build a 3-bedroom house, you ask him how much will it cost, they ask you in Kenya, how much do you have? And when you tell them 2 million shillings, they tell you that is enough. And what they'll do is that they will construct with your money. When the money is finished, they move to the next guy and leave you with, with your stuck project. Why? Because they're trying to ensure that flow of work continues. They don't care about you because they don't know where tomorrow is going to come from. So that's what we're talking about. And then informal workers. The construction workers in Kenya and I'm sure even in South Africa, they wake up every morning and you walk to a construction site and you wait outside, hoping that that day you'll be picked. And the supervisor comes out and says, I only need 5 masons today. You, the rest of you go home. And you go back home that day. And tomorrow you maybe have to come again or go to another site. And has it ever occurred to you that most of the informal or the formal settlements or the slum dwellers are actually people who work on construction sites? A good percentage of them. So if they are not assured of work, what kind of house will you ever construct for them that they can afford? So we want to create a system that enables them to be able to start earning money so that they can also join the financial market. My eyesight is not very good. I'm supposed to be using that, but I can't see. I have to see that. So we have created a system that enables people who want to do repairs, enables people who want to add a room to their house, because maybe they want to add some rent, as the case was in South Africa, or the boys have grown up and now they need another house. There's another debate about a house and a home. Traditionally, when Africans, you had homesteads and you had several huts, and when you needed another house, you just added another hut. Right now, what happens when you have a 3-bedroom house and you need more space? You need to be able to add a room to your house. In some cases, people just want to connect water or connect power, connect utilities. In some cases, you want to upgrade the quality of building materials. For example, you had wooden windows. Now you want to have glass windows. You want to paint the floor. You want to paint the wall. You want to put tiles on the floor. Those are financing opportunities that financial institutions can fund. But only if the scope is defined well and it's deterministic on how, when this starts here and this ends here. And so our housing platform that we've created as I build, it's a pipeline that allows the various players in the housing value chain to come in. So as the family walks from the point where they have no house, the point where they have a house, they need to interact with these various players along the housing value chain. They need plans and bills of quantities from architects and other professionals. They need to be able to get a lender who can finance their proposed improvements. And so the lender is able to do that because now there is documents that can help him define what the customer needs. They need a contractor who can be able to deliver that product in time, and they also need a material supplier. The contractor needs workers. So when all those things interact, together with even a regulator who wants to regulate that environment, then they enable this person to walk through this journey. This journey is being walked right now, but without any support from a simplified system. and that's what iBuild does. So iBuild as a solution helps someone to be able to design their dream project. So you can go to the iBuild platform, and by keying in your requirements, you will be able to get preloaded plans from architects, and you can choose the plan that is closest to you, and it puts you in touch with that particular architect. And so instead of the architect charging you $50, maybe let's say $500 for the entire design, if he's just moving a door, why shouldn't he charge you $5 or $50 for that matter? So what you're saying is that the architect doesn't lose, but the customer is able to get the best services. Similarly, it enables you to be able to play in a space where once you have your product, you can advertise on a platform, and all contractors within that area can bid for it competitively without knowing what the other contractors bid. And so you are able to get the best value for money. And then finally, you can be able to send that same information to the lender so that the lender is able to make a decision on whether they can give you a loan. And once you have a loan, you can work with the contractor so that the contractor is only paid based on milestone. So that, for example, if the house is going to cost $50,000 and the foundation is $10,000, he only gets paid $10,000 when he has finished doing the foundation. That way, what it does is that the lender is sure that he's funding the right thing, and the customer gets value for money. And all these players, including the contractor, the customer, the material supplier, the construction worker, are rated. So that anytime you deal with somebody, you are able to rate them based on the way they have performed. That produces transparency and accountability on the players, so that players are held responsible for the decisions they make. So we've been running a pilot in Kenya going to 1 year right now. And we've learned a lot of things. Some of them, if I was to speak here, I would be giving business secrets. But we've learned a lot of things, one of which was that, like our customers, the workers mainly use USSD. That is SMS-based form. So they might not be able to afford data. We've created a USSD platform that allows any person with a feature phone as a construction worker to be able to upload their profiles and say, I am a mason, I have this amount of experience, I am based in this locality, and anytime masonry work is advertised in that area, they receive SMSs that tell them there is a job at this place. And using the SMS, they can be able to book that job. And now, instead of waking up every morning to go to a site and check whether they have a job or not, they will know well in advance whether they have a job or not. So what does that do is that they are able to know what jobs they have even up to 3 months in advance. And when they are paid through a wallet, which shows their transactions, like their record of how much money they have been being paid along the way. What does that do? It brings one of the lowest players within the housing value chain, the construction worker, into the financial space. Because you not only know how much has been earning, you can even anticipate what is going to earn in future. For financial institutions, if you don't want to fund anything else, these are potential new funding opportunities we have. This guy should be able to come to a financial institution and ask for loans for tools, for example. Loans to be able to improve.
2 more minutes, thank you.
Yeah, the construction. So for us, the USSD platform is something that we learned from the Kenyan example. The other one is we also have a smartphone version that is mainly used by the other customers. You can be able to create a project. You can You can advertise that project to various contractors and they can bid for it. And inbuilt within all this is a wallet.